Okay, welcome back to part 3 of my little mini series on tips and tricks. I was really hoping to do this in 3 parts, but I don't think it's going to happen. This last part 3 would have been probably an hour long, and to me just about anything running over 30 minutes, 35 minutes is about where I like to stay. And I think part 2 was about 40 some minutes. I can't remember. So I'm going to have to add an extra part to this. So it's going to be a 4-part mini series. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and quit talking and get into part 3 of tips and tricks. Okay. I went upstairs and got my blue nose and brought it down here. And what little tip I'm going to give you is how I got these dead eyes all spaced the same. Okay, so I got a really nice little straight line here across. And this one here is a little bit different size, so that's why it might look like it's off. It's smaller than these other ones. But I've made some jigs for this, and I'm going to show you these jigs. It's going to be my tip, the jigs. But you want to try and get these all evenly spaced so they go down in a straight line. And if you look back in here, let me turn this a little bit more. I can't see what you're seeing. Let me see. Ain't got enough room here to turn this on the table because it's so big. Let me see if it's showing up. Right there. Right in there. You see that rope hanging there that I made? I've got a jig for that. It's hanging off of that belay pin. So I'll show you that jig that I made. So I've got 2 different jigs here. Alright. So let me set this off to the side so I can show you these jigs and how they work. Okay. So here's a close-up view of the jigs I used. This one was for the bounty, and this one was for my blue nose. And you can see on this one here, I've got 2 dead eyes on there. All right. And what I do is, and I'm going to back out a little bit here now. What I do is, usually they'll give you some little tacks with your model. If not, you have to go get some. Probably could use a straight pin or a sewing needle or something like that. But you get these little tacks. And I drilled holes. I didn't try to nail these in there. I drilled holes. And you put these little tacks in there. Okay? There's 4 of them in there. There's 2 and 2. All right, you see that? There's the front side, there's the back side. And then I take a little bit of 5-minute epoxy and stick them on there so they won't come back out. All right? And you got to get them just the right spacing in that your dead eyes, 2 of the holes on your dead eyes will fit in there. Okay, there's 3 holes on your dead eyes. All right? So let's see, it should go like this. This here is the bottom dead eye. This here is the top one. So you put the 2 little tacks through the top 2 holes of the dead eye. The bottom 1 hole is down towards the bottom. And then 2 holes there, and the single hole is up towards the top. All right. So that's how you make that jig. And by doing this, you'll keep that nice even spacing all the way down your dead eyes. So what I do is, I'll take this jig with the dead eyes, and I will pull my shroud line down, because the bottom one here, the bottom one is stationary. It's into your rail or somewhere along the ship side that the bottom was stationary. It's not going to move. So then I take and bring my shroud line down to this top one, and I'll tug on it. Tug on that shroud line, wrap it around, and tug on it to make it nice and taut. Now, you don't want to pull it too hard because you'll pull your mask out of whack. And then you tie it off. okay? And then once you get it tied off and get it real nice and tight, then you pull it off of this this jig. Yeah, right. Pull it off of that jig, and now you got your shroud line on there hanging, and then you just pull this off of the bottom one, and then you run your two lanyards. You run your lanyards between them two dead eyes. If you get what I mean. Once again, you probably have to go back and watch one of my videos on how I did that. I show you how I did that on doing my rigging. All right. Now that rope I showed you hanging on the side of the inside the ship there around my belay pins, and I've got that all over there. That is just two little pieces of dowel rod glued to another stick, you know. And I take my string and I'll wrap my string around it about 4 or 5 times. And then I would take a little dab of super glue and touch to the end of that string so it'll stay there. Okay. And then what I did was took white glue, some of this, that white glue, and went over the whole thing to give it some structure. Then I pull it off of there, and then I put it on my belay pin, and while it's still setting up, you can shape it to how you want it to lay, make it look like it's, you know, hanging over something. So that's how I did that. Those are my little jigs. Once again, I caught this on the internet, some guy doing this. Two pieces of little wood for my rope, and four little tacks for my dead eyes. Once again, now go back and watch. I show using it in my blue nose build, but little jigs like that really come in handy. They really do, especially when you got a repetitious parts or a lot of parts to do the same way. But this will get them spaced out nice and neat for you. All right, in this tip we're going to talk about ratlines, but before I do, I want to go back. You remember a couple clips ago I was talking about them brass tubing, and you can see here where I used it. I just found the right brass tube that fit over this boom, and you can see I got a ring there, and I believe there's 2 on the end there. And then if we go up on my mast, follow my mast on up, okay, there's a bunch of them right here. If this is the one I'm pointing at, let me make sure. Yep. There's a bunch of them right here, a bigger brass tube that fit over this dowel rod. There. Okay? So instead of using the material they gave me and trying to build those things, I just went out and brought that brass tube. Alright? But what I want to get at is the ratlines. I want to show you these things here. Let me come up here to the front ones. Right there. Ratlines. Okay. Now they're pretty easy to see right now because my sails are on there. Let me get my chair. Bring it over here. But when you're doing these ratlines, I'm sitting here and I'm seeing this at a different angle than what you are. And right here I'm looking at the ones over on the next one, even these, and I'm losing them. I can't see them. I'm losing them to what's in the background. So an easy way to do that is take yourself a piece of white paper and put behind there, and lean it up or whatever you got to do, clip it on there, and now I can see my ratlines and see what I'm tying off. Okay, trying to get them to hang down. That's a simple way. Now you can also take this piece of paper and mark off every so many millimeters or a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch, however far you want to space your ratlines. You can mark it off on this piece of paper and then clip that behind there and just follow your spacings on up. Okay? Now, best thing I can tell you for knots is get on the internet and look up knots. Or you can get on YouTube. There's one guy that did how to tie ratlines on YouTube. And that's where I learned the method of tying a couple of these knots off. But best thing I can tell you, if you want to learn how to tie a knot, just get on the internet. There's all kinds of websites that show you how to tie knots. Because this is pretty tedious. This gets boring after a while, tying all these ratlines off. And on this particular model, the Blue Nose, you notice there's 4 shroud lines here, but they only use 3 of them for tying off ratlines. So my little tip is, get yourself a little piece of paper and stick behind there, and you can see what you're doing. You can see where you're at. It makes it much easier. Okay. And like I said, back on the other video right before it, let me get up here, readjust the camera. Let's go back down. You can see the spacing that I was talking about on them dead eyes. Alright, so use them jigs. They work out pretty good. And if you go back and watch, I do a whole lot of my rigging off of the ship. I do as much as I can. If you was to go back and watch, I had a piece of wood that I drilled a hole in, and I set my mast in there, and I worked on a lot of this rigging before I even put it on the ship. I just cut my shroud lines extra long, and then when I bring it over, all I got to do is tie off them shroud lines. But I did as much rigging as I could off of the ship. I found it much, much easier to do that because you got to go from side to side here. Instead of trying to spin this model around, knocking something over, I found it easier to work off them masts, get as much done off of the ship that you can do, and then put it on there, and then finish it up. All right. You got a model you want to build, and you want to do some lighting. And I've never found a need for this fiber optics yet. Okay, I'll show this to you in a minute. Like I said, when I light my models, it's either a LED bulb or most of the time I'll use this strip lighting. Okay, I've got 2 strips of this in the nose of this model here, and that is more than enough to light up the whole nose of this section. But there's a lot of guys that I've watched that will take this fiber optics, and for every little hole that they drill in their model for a window, okay, they'll take that fiber optics and stick a strand in each and every one of them little holes to light up their model. Alright, now here's this fiber optics. I've never, like I said, I haven't used it yet, but I'm sure there's going to come a time when I will need it. But in some of these models, you're very limited to your space on the inside of the model. And sooner or later, you're going to come to a point where you need a 90-degree angle bend in this fiber optics. Now, true fiber optics, as I know it, is made out of a real thin strand of glass. But this fiber optics for models is made out of plastic. And let's say you got a section or something you want to do and you need a 90-degree angle. Easiest way I've seen to do that is to take your soldering iron and get that thing nice and hot. Get the tip of it nice and hot. And you hold that soldering iron under it. Now you're going to have to practice with it. You hold it real close. I'm probably a 1/4 inch, maybe a 1/2 inch away. And just hold it there. And the heat from that soldering iron will cause that all of a sudden to just droop. And it will bend itself into a 90-degree angle. And that way you won't destroy it with like a lighter or something like that. So just the heat from your soldering iron held fairly close to that will soften it up enough that it will droop and make a 90 for you. All right. All right. Once again, I've gone over to the hobby store and I bought some of this styrene sheet, little sheets of plastic. Okay. And you can get it in different thicknesses. Now what I had to do when I was building my landing craft, I wanted to make what looked like little caps for my fuel tanks, okay? Little round caps. Now if anybody's tried to cut a round circle out of a piece of plastic, it's almost impossible to sit here with a knife and try to cut a little round hole out. All right. So what I did, and it depends on what size you need, I've got some of these hole punches. All right, got different sizes. This is a large hole, this is a small hole, and this one here is a little elliptical hole. And I needed them little fuel caps. Well, I just took this punch, put it up here. Now I gotta find it. Hold on. I think it went inside here. And right there, you got yourself a nice little circle. All right. Now I believe I used the smaller one for them fuel caps. Okay, same thing. Just put it up there, punch it out, and got to find it. I'm on out of there. I don't know where it went. Oh, there it is. Right there it is. All right. And also, when I was building my submarine, I needed a few of these little things. So, and this one here, this elliptical one now, depending on the scale of your model now, don't forget about that. Let's see if I can get this off. And where did that one go? There it is. That almost looks like a hatch for one of your model ships. All right. So, you know, don't overlook things like this. You know, they come in pretty handy. You know, you never know where you might need a small circle, and that's the way to get them. Okay on that one. Okay, Sharpie. Now you think, what am I going to do with a Sharpie on a model? Well, once again, let me go back to my landing craft here. Right here. Lettering on this display that they gave you. All right, instead of sitting there with a paintbrush, a small paintbrush, and try to highlight each one of them letters, I took a Sharpie, turned it on its edge, and very carefully went over that lettering and wound up with that. Okay, now you can use this Sharpie in a lot of places, you know. If you got something you need done that's just a little small area and you don't want to tape it all off, get yourself a Sharpie. They come in very handy. And you can also use them for touch-up. You know, if you got a little small area, because they come in all different colors, you might find the right color to just do a little touch-up. So don't overlook a Sharpie. They come in real handy. And talking about touch-up, if I got a spot on my model and who knows, I scratched it or whatever, and I need to do a little touch-up, well, if anybody knows, most of my models are painted with a spray can. Well, I don't want to get that spray can out and touch up a little spot. So once again, my pill bottles, I will spray that paint inside this pill bottle until I get enough in the bottom of it, and then I can take a small brush and dip into that and do my touch-up or paint a small part or whatever I have to do. That's a good way to get that paint out of the can to where you can use it with a brush. All right. Now, you drilled some holes in your ship, all right, or wherever you drill a small hole. These little portholes were already open, but my Arizona was not, and I had to drill out each and every one of them portholes. All right, well, you get them drilled out, and you look in there, and you'll see every once in a while you'll see a little piece of plastic stuck in there. I went to the welding supply store. That's the only place I know to get these things. I went to the welding supply store and picked me up this little thing right here. And what these are for, those are little bitty files, little small files. And what they're for is if you got a torch on your oxyacetylene outfit and the little tip gets clogged up, you find the right size and you stick in there and you clean it out with these. Well, these things work great for getting in little small holes that you might have drilled. I have never found a file this small. So these things work great. They're little bitty small files, and I don't know if that's going to show up. But right there, that's a file. And you can get inside them little holes. You just find the right one out of all of these here that fits your hole, and you can ream it out with this. Bought this at a welding supply store. I don't know if you can get where else you can get these. That's the brand I got, if that's showing up. Okay, you might be able to get on the internet and find it. But this thing comes in real handy for reaming out little small holes. Okay, we're back to this model again, my Dresden. You got these spotlights right here, and I'll try and move it so the light catches it. You got two spotlights here, and I got two in the back. Okay, let me move it around a little bit. Maybe the light will pick it up. All right, what I've done with them spotlights, when you get these in the kit, it's just a little solid piece of plastic. I took and drilled a little hole in the center of it, in the front where the light would be. I drilled a little hole in there, trying to stay within the perimeter of that outer circle. And then what I done was, on this particular one, I painted them white inside. I painted the hole white. Once I got the hole drilled out, I painted it white. And then I took my 5-minute epoxy. I mixed up a little dab of 5-minute epoxy and stuck it in that hole. Now you have to do it at an angle because you can't do it on the ship. You have to do it where it's sitting up, straight up and down. You put a little dab of that 5-minute epoxy in there, and you can come above the rim of the hole because that epoxy's got enough viscosity to it. It will hold, it won't overflow the hole. And when it dries clear, and it looks just like the lens on them spotlights. It's a neat little trick I picked up. Works great. Makes them things look just like spotlights. Okay for that one. 5-minute epoxy. Little dab will do you. Okay, now you got your model done. Since I got this one sitting here, we'll talk about this one. You got your model done. Now, I don't have the money to put every one of my models under glass. Sure, it'd be nice to have a nice big curio cabinet, but I don't think the wife's going to let me spend that kind of money just to put my models in it. So you're like me. You got your models sitting around on a shelf somewhere, and they're collecting dust. A couple times a year, I'll get them down, depending on what I'm doing. It might be more than a couple times a year, but I'll take a can of compressed air. All right. Now, this particular model, you got to be careful. There's a lot of small parts on here, and there's some pressure in one of these cans. But you just hold it back and give it a little spray and spray some of that dust off of there. And then you can come along with a makeup brush. Once again, now you can find these things anywhere they sell makeup. They're real nice and soft. You can get them in all different sizes. And you come along and very carefully just give it a little dusting, okay? And as you're dusting it, hit it with some more air. You can also use a very soft paintbrush. But you want to get that dust off of there. You spent all the time to build this model. You want to try and keep them clean. All right? So that works the best for me, you know, this little makeup brush. Get yourself a couple of these. They are, oh, that is so soft. It's no wonder women buy them. Okay for that one. All right. Now you got your little small part. Now trust me, there's a little piece of photo etch sitting right there. You got your little small part. And like I said, you go to pick it up with a pair of tweezers or something, and the next thing you know, it's gone. You don't know what happened to it. And if you're working in an environment where you got a carpet on your floor, I've been on my hands and knees for hours looking for things like this. A guy sent me a comment, and I haven't tried it, but I'm sure it works. Go get your vacuum cleaner. Take your hose attachment. Get a pair of pantyhose from your wife and stick it over the end of your hose. And then get down there and vacuum around your carpet where you think that part might be. And luckily, if you're lucky, that part will get stuck on the outside of that pantyhose and you found it. I have seen guys, I've seen one guy that had an apron. He had an apron and he put Velcro on the bottom of his desk and then on the edges of that apron, and he would stick that apron up here so whenever he dropped something it would fall down into that apron. But yeah, instead of using tweezers, once again I go back to use that little bitty tack to pick up your little small parts, whether it be photo etch or plastic parts or little wooden parts. That's the best way to handle them. I cannot tell you how many times I was on my hands and knees because I used a pair of tweezers. And you go and try and pick that up and it's just, it's gone. Could be anywhere on your desk. But if it gets into that carpet, try the pantyhose trick. That sounds like a real good idea. I haven't done it. I've been lucky enough to find all mine. But yeah, that should work for you. Okay, the little tip I want to make here is try going to your craft store. If you need parts, and like I said, a lot of times I think some of these model ship builders or manufacturers don't really they give you just enough to get by. And there's a lot of times you need things, like here's a pack of eye hooks, and I've ordered these. There's an extra pack of eye hooks that I had to get because I ran out. The point I'm trying to make here is run over to Hobby Lobby or your craft store or wherever and go into the jewelry department, and right here. Now they're a little long. You can cut them off, cut them as size you need, but there's some eye hooks, and they got different sizes of these things. Little rings. I've got all kinds of little rings in here. Okay, I had to order some extra ones of these. Over at Hobby Lobby, they got all kinds of these little rings. You can go over there and get them. Okay. All kinds of little things you can find in that jewelry department. Here's my chain. I go over and buy all different types of chain. Now that right there looks, you know, depending on what scale you got, That right there, it needs to be dulled down, needs to be painted, but that looks just like chain. Like I said, I've got all kinds of this. All right, and I just go over there and root through their jewelry department, and you'll find all kinds of stuff. I found this over there. On the top of my blue nose, I needed some little balls on the top of the mask. Well, I went over there and I found these things. A whole selection of beads that came in a bag. Well, I'll never use all these. But right here, here's a couple balls that were in there. Of course, I had to fill up the tip of them. They got a little hole in each edge of it. And I had to fill that in. But that was the perfect little ball for the top of my blue nose. Here's some that was in that thing. Those look like little barrels. You got to fill in the little hole on the end of it. And you can paint a couple little black stripes around it to look like metal bands. But that right there could be a little barrel on your ship. Okay? Once again, depending on scale. There's a couple different sizes in here. These little things here, little beads. I bought these over there. I just dropped a couple of them. I bought these little beads over there, little small ones. I used them on my Arizona. You'd have to go back and look and see, but I used them little beads. They came in handy. I think I also used them on the blue nose. I think I used them for my perils. I'm not sure. I don't remember, so don't quote me on that. I'd have to go back and look. But they could be perils. Look that word up if you don't know what a peril is. Or you could use some of these little wooden beads again. That might have been what I did use. So, search around their jewelry department. Little thumbtacks. Okay? Those will help you when you're planking your ship if you need to hold a piece of wood in position. Or needles. All this kind of little stuff. So the little tip I'm trying to give you here is you don't have to get on the website and order from all these little ship places that sell stuff for ships. You can go over to your different craft stores and use your imagination. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I forget where I used this, but I needed a gear for something. What was it I used that gear on? Can't remember what model that was, but I needed a gear. And I think that was on my Batmobile, I'm not sure, for my searchlight. And I cut that gear in half and it made, and I found that over there at the craft store. Just all kinds of little things, you can, you just have to use your imagination, run around to the different stores, Because the main problem I had is I was building a model ship and I needed a bell or I needed some extra belay pins or, eye hooks or anything. The problem I was having is you go to a website that sells parts for model ships. You might need 4 different things, but they only carry 3 of them. So then you got to go to another website to get that 4th thing. So now you start adding up all this shipping charges. It seems like no one place has everything you need. And that's the same way with my lighting, my little LED lights. They might have the LED lights I want, but then they don't have a little transformer box or the right male and female plug to hook it up. So then I got to go to another site. So, shop around. Save yourself a little time and money. Start out at the hobby stores. And that's one of the things that I hated when Radio Shack closed up. They used to sell a lot of little LED lights and male and female switches and off and on switches. Now you can't get it no more. Now you got to get on the internet. So to try and save yourself, from a bunch of shipping charges, try to get everything you need together and order at one time. There's a lot of places out there. In some of my videos, I told you where I bought some of the stuff at. There's a lot of nice places out there to get parts for model ships. Just about anything you might need is out there. So you just have to search for it. Because a lot of these kit makers don't give you things you need that if you want to go that extra step and make your model, look a little bit better than normal. So, yeah, that's my little tip there. Search around. Use your imagination. And once again, save everything. A lot of times I'll build a model and I'll have some extra parts. That all goes into my little collection here of stuff. I've got all kinds of little pieces of plastic or things that might come in handy for something. So, yep. That's my little go-to box, my little junk box. All right.